So is cable management actually important? A lot of people dread it during their build process, but I'm going to give you 3 reasons why it's really essential. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. Thank you for joining me for another video. Please subscribe if you enjoy my content, smash that like button, and leave a comment below. I want to know what you think of cable management. So, cable managing your PC. A lot of people absolutely dread this part. I mean, they'll love putting in all the components, the motherboard, GPU, even the CPU, but it seems like when it's actually time to fix up your cables so it looks nice and everything fits in, so many people actually hate doing this. In fact, I'll even guess that a large percentage of people will just get their cables to the point where they can basically just like smash them in with the back panel or even the front panel of the case, and they don't have to worry about it. But I'm going to give you 3 reasons why you should worry about cable management. The first reason why you should worry about cable management actually has to do with performance. Believe it or not, really messy and unorganized cables can wreak havoc on your system. You wouldn't think so, but let me tell you a couple of things that it can do. If your cables are a jumbled mess, you have a lot of case fans, you're going to have your GPU fan if you're doing air cooling, maybe even fans on your CPU block if you're doing air cooling for your CPU. So now imagine if you stuff all those cables in, especially if it's near a case fan or your GPU, and those cables go right up against the fan of whatever component that it's close to. It's going to stop that fan completely. Not only can you break the fan, the motor's just going to get stressed, and maybe when it lets go, it may hit something and break off. You're going to have much worse thermal performance on your case. Imagine if your fans just stop working on the inside. You have no airflow. That means your case is going to heat up, your GPU may get damaged eventually, and in the meantime, you're going to get much less performance because everything's heating up and it's going to thermal throttle. And if your cables are bad enough, they could even reach the fan on your GPU. Now, I've seen this happen. Make sure for performance sake that everything's nice and neat. Buy a lot of zip ties. They're extremely cheap. Sometimes for $1 or $2, you can get like a pack of 100 zip ties. Just zip tie the cables in sort of a logical routing pattern. Like if you have cables going to the motherboard, zip tie them together. If you have fans, zip tie them separately but together to themselves. That way you can really sneak everything away. You don't have to spend ages on cable management, but at least get all the cables under control so they're outside of the way of your cooling components, and that way you won't have any issues. The second reason you should manage your cables, it's going to come down once again to actually the performance of the computer. And now the first one was cooling performance, and the second reason in terms of performance, let's say if something's actually wrong with your computer, you have a cable that's plugged in incorrectly, maybe to your motherboard, to your GPU, like an RGB cable to your motherboard oftentimes could be put in incorrectly. If your cables are an absolute mess, you're going to have a very hard time finding the cable, being able to pull it out and replace it because everything's going to be a jumbled mess. So that means you're going to be a lot more likely to leave a bad cable in there or a problem in your system, and that's eventually going to affect your performance, even the reliability and longevity of the system. So as you can see, cable management actually adds up to being really important. We haven't even gotten to the aesthetics yet. We are just talking about different performance aspects that it can actually hinder. If your cables are really messy, let's say if you pull something in order to get to a motherboard cable or something like that, if everything's tangled up, you may be pulling on another cable that's connected to the motherboard, and you can bend different pins like the RGB pins or even fan headers. So you can do a lot of damage to your motherboard as well as different components if your cables really aren't routed properly. Now, the third and last thing, of course, it's going to be aesthetics. Everybody loves a nicely cable managed system. Even if you don't go out and buy a more expensive custom set of cables, at least cable manage the cables that come with your power supply. Make sure to zip tie everything, make it nice and neat. You can even get little sticky pads, and a lot of cases nowadays come with really intelligent cable routing and cable management points where you can actually put the cables in there so they're out of the way. It's not going to add too much of an expense, it's not going to take too much time, but aesthetically, when you look at a nice clean system, it's absolutely a huge night and day difference. It looks like you put in work, and you should feel proud of a build every time you cable manage it like that. Now, we build PCs because we like building our own PCs and we like messing with our own parts. So why would you skip on the cable management? Why would you go through the trouble of putting everything together and then in the end just making everything a jumbled mess? You might as well just go and buy a Dell or something like that. At least they're going to zip tie their cables for you. So the reason we build PCs is to feel proud of the work that we accomplish. So when you know that the performance is going to be good because of your cable management, you're not going to have any problems, and the aesthetics are going to be awesome because you cable managed it. When it's done, even though cable managing is extra work in the build, you're going to feel so much better. And some of the tips on how to make your cable managing easier, like I said before, have a lot of zip ties around, have the proper tools to cut those zip ties, and that's basically all you need. And then just make sure to match it up to the different points in your case. Usually I like to do the thinner and smaller cables first underneath, and then the larger cables like the power supply cables, GPU cables, since they're thicker and they often look nicer, maybe they're like a colored cable mods cable, I like to put those on top of the smaller cables. That way you're blocking any sort of ugly cables and you can route everything nice and intelligently, and it's going to look really awesome. Usually what I'll do, I'll put my whole build together. As I'm doing it, I'll see whatever I can cable manage at the time. Let's say if I know I'm not going to move fans around or move something around as I'm building it, I'll make sure to zip tie those cables, but I won't go too far because when you're doing a build, often your plans may change or you may have to route something differently. So don't go too crazy during your build doing the cable management. The best time to do it is when everything is done, and then you can go through your system. At first you could even turn it on and test it. You can come later the next day maybe and work on your cable management. After it's done and you're not moving any more components, then you can really go and attack the different areas, cable manage different spots, see where you can improve it. So wait until the end to do 100% of it, and I think you're going to be a lot happier. Alright guys, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, smash that like button, leave a comment below. I want to know what you guys think about cable management, and I'll see you guys on the next video.